Transition. Comments from any of the groups that you'd like to get over, or questions about transition for me or any of the panel? One down here. There we go.
I was very relieved when you spoke earlier about the position of the 40 hard done by parishes, if I can call them that. In the middle of the section that Peter was talking about, there was another group where he sort of dismissed those as saying, yes, they shouldn't have any difficulty at all. In the context of whether we like it or not, the numbers at churches do seem to be going down considerably. From perhaps it's being arrested a little, but the main point about the 4% cap is not to do, as Peter said, with the diocese being profligate, so much as the shared costs being shared over fewer total numbers. So how do we propose to deal with not only the transition for the 40 who will be handled on an individual basis, and 26 of those 40 seem to be needing some pretty careful consideration.
Yeah. I think if I can just answer that element of the question, we've looked at the 40 initially, and you're right, there may be another 5 or 10 on the left-hand side of the middle band where the increase is up to about 10,000 a year, something like that. We'll need to look at that as well. The point is we've trying to give ourselves at least 12 months now, so a team, including the 2 bishops, 2 archdeacons, Peter's team, Alan Hume's team, and other supporters, which could involve some of the panel here, can get involved with that work with those parishes in planning out a transition, because there are, each will be subtly different from the others. And we did make that point that we don't want to go for a lengthy transition period, but probably a period of 3 years would be a sensible one. To support that, I think one of the things I should mention, I don't think we've mentioned it yet today, is some of the parishes who believe they might be on the right-hand side of the chart, so beneficiaries from this change of system, have indicated they might be prepared to pay for a period, perhaps a transition period, more than their newly assessed parish share to help with the transition arrangements. So that's something, again, that we need to take some time over the next 12 months to work into the planning. Is that...
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on point 2, transition? Or you can raise points on any of them, effectiveness as well, if you want to. Just back to hear from you.
A key point from us, because we spent most of our time trying to discuss this, is transparency. I think what we need is we need to understand the vision, because the majority of parishes are going to have to pay more, was the stark conclusion that I got from the graphs that you put up. And if we're going to be expected to pay more, we need to know to what are we contributing. We had a lot of questions around, we as parishes are being asked to contribute to diocesan costs. Diocese pays central costs. What are we getting there for the churches that are going to be paying less and effectively supported by the churches that are paying more? What are we getting for our money? So I just think we need more detail around the changes and what are we actually, what value are we going to see from this?
Well, I think what we've tried to do, what I tried to do when I summarised the first 2 presentations was our current system does not encourage growth. In place, we've tweaked it so it kind of fudges its way through. But what we're trying to do is come up with a system that encourages paying for the full costs of ministry, but then also encourages growth.
Okay, just on that then, so just explain to us, it seems to me to be a bit of a fudge to go from 62 to 55k for the cost. It'd be much easier, to be honest, and say it's 62k, but actually, because the maths works in a better way, that we've gone to 55.
That's a fair point. I think some of us on the review would have been happy to stick with 62, but then we actually kind of want to move to something that we feel is a very strong chance we'll be able to implement. You can cut some of those costs. There's an element of judgment about whether they are really supporting direct ministry or not, and we've just taken a judgment to get to the 55 with that. I think as far as the overall value and the budget, I mean, diocesan budgets have gone down in real terms. Probably if you look back 10 years ago and discounted for inflation, the diocese financially is 10% smaller in real terms than it was then. So those have been kept under control. But if you want to understand where that money is spent, every year the Diocesan Synod has a very full presentation on that. The slides are available on the diocesan website, and you can see exactly what our contribution is to the national church, to the various central teams, and to ministry costs. So that's available. I think we all at parish level need to kind of feel that we can share that with parishioners, if that helps them understand how the thing works.
And just the last point.
Nick,
I'd just like to come up with something. I have to declare one interest, which is my wife works for the diocese, and therefore she's paid by it, and she's part of central costs. Nonetheless, if you're going to invest, if you're going to give money to a charity as a church, it's a jolly good idea to look at that charity's setup and see what their administration costs are. And one of the dangers, of course, as some of you will know, is you find a charity where the admin costs are maybe 20% of the charity's work, and you fight shy of those sorts of charities, I hope. What people don't look so much at is the other end of that scale. So the charity commissioners get really quite worried with charities that don't have admin costs of at least 5 to 8%. On the basis if their costs aren't that high, they're not being properly managed. So notwithstanding what I said about my sort of vested interests as far as Hazel is concerned, as an incumbent in the diocese, having had to raise parish share for a long, long time, and having seen what parishes get from the diocese that they don't acknowledge, safeguarding, this does not come free, my friends. I just want to make a passionate plea for thinking about when you say the diocese must continue to cut costs at the centre. That would be disaster.
Sorry, that's not the point I'm making about cutting costs. It's understanding and having the information. It's all very well to say it's on a website. Just help, what the plea from our group was is just give it to us simply. We'll go and sell this, which is what we're going to have to do, but just make it simple and give us the information. Just sort of say it's over there.
And you obviously can't go through the sort of kind of detail that Peter went through tonight. That's not appropriate, but we will make sure there is that. By the way, I think I do come free, except I had a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits before I started tonight, so kind of...
Can I just come in briefly, Nigel? My name's Nick Edmonds, for those of you who don't know. In addition to being Deputy Diocesan Secretary, I also lead communications. So communications, of all things, and certainly the parish share system is certainly very much in my area of interest. When we started off this process, we categorised the issues that people had logged with the current parish share system. And when we had analysed all of those issues, we reckoned that about 2/3 were actually to do with communication issues and poor understanding of the present system. So whatever we come up with, there's that 2/3 challenge on top of it to communicate the system better. And that's certainly something that we're committed to putting resource into.
Okay, I'm going to shut up, wait for the next question, and see if somebody else on the team would like to answer it.
It doesn't surprise me because there's so many accountants in the room who are focusing on allocated costs. That's not the issue. The issue is about investing in growing parishes and good stewardship. And my second point is, we should use the diocese more. You know, you've got costs of 11.7 million. You know, we are paying a lot of money. And we've had Juliet, our PCC, and that you can get better value from the use of the diocese by a good model. But it's about investing in growth.
So one of the things we have been challenging ourselves with in the centre is, as we've been looking at the Transforming Church, Transforming Lives, is how can we, as central teams, actually make ourselves more available? How can we much better meet the needs of the parishes? How can we be more accessible? And that is a challenge and a conversation that's going on with every member of staff, because at the very heart of what we do is we are only there to support the parishes in everything parishes and schools in everything that we do. And we need your help in helping us be able to understand how we can support you better. We're not going to grow to some great big monolith that has all the capacity that you might require, but we can be better, and we want to be better at how we can support you and signpost and point to good resources, good places, try and join up with volunteers. Actually, the type of work that is going on in Alan Hume's team, which Juliet is in, with volunteer consultants who are actually enabling them to punch way above the scale and weight of that department, is exactly what we're looking to do in other areas. So I completely agree with that.
I'll just give you a couple of examples from my parish, the Bourne in Farnham. Juliet has been a fantastic support for our finance team, stewardship team. We transitioned to the parish giving scheme. That's really cut the admin. It has increased giving. The fact that a lot of parishioners have ticked the inflation linking box has helped. So that's been a tremendous help to us. We work with Alan Hume on his team, putting together a mission action plan, which I think we're now calling a church development plan. But again, with that whole process was something we would have struggled as a PCC to get going ourselves, but having outside facilitation support and support throughout the process actually was fantastic. And that made that we, as a parish, were able to set ourselves some clear priorities and objectives on what we wanted to focus on in the next 3 years. So there's some great resource there. Be aware of it and use it.
Can I just pick up your point about investment into growth? I think this proposed system helps growth for three real reasons. One is not only is it transparent, but there's a reality to it. With the subsidies, not only are we confused, but it's an unreal. The parish share is often unreal to the costs of actually having a member of clergy in a church. And when there's unreality and subsidy and lack of transparency, it does breed a degree of complacency that whatever happens, we're going to carry on having a vicar. And I think that it has been identified by churches themselves in this process. Secondly, it reduces the change of parish share the more you grow. When I first came to Christchurch, about a couple of years after, we started growing, and at the same time, the parish share system changed. And our parish share went up 12% one year, 12% the next year was 12%, 10%, and 10%. That was when they started capping it at 10%. Well, it was capped at 12%, and then it capped at 10%, and then it was capped at 5%, and then it was capped at 4%. So I know exactly the cost of change, but a lot of it was about growth. And it was just as you want to grow, and you need to reinvest in the resources to continue the growth, it was drawn away from you. And that's why the impact of growth needs to be minimised on parish share, and what this hybrid model does. And thirdly, this creates an intentional sort of that 520 or 570,000 intentional investment fund that is being released through this means that what was the old subsidy that was in the parish share can actually be targeted to parishes that really need it and have the highest potential for growth. And that's where I think this proposed model will help growth, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I come from one of the most challenged group of churches, and we do recognise that we are subsidised, and I'd like to thank everybody here who is from one of the parish that has subsidised us. But equally, we've talked about going back to our parishes and selling this to our parishes. If I go back to my parish now and say, well, we're on this the extreme level where we're going to sort of potentially have to pay a huge amount more, which we can't afford, or there might be one of 4 different options, none of which has been agreed, some of which might be closing the parish down or whatever, that is actually quite a hard sell. And I'd quite like to know how you expect me to sell that to anybody. And having said that, I accept the overview of the principle of revising the parish share.
So this is one of the challenges of being transparent, actually, because it would be very tempting, actually, to hold off sharing anything until we're at the place where there's an ability to be able to have those individual parish conversations. But what we're having a consultation about and what we're talking about now is the conversation that will go on with Bishop's Council and Diocesan Synod about what we do as a diocese, as a whole, what we do together. Of course, naturally, that leads to the very understandable and natural response of, but what about, how this is going to affect me and my parish? Of course, that's where we go. What I would say is, I think I've explained we have every intention of having that close engagement and support. The process that we're going through is to get to a place where there's an agreement around the overall model. And we will then do a piece of work, which we are shaping at the moment, through August, where we work with, and they don't know this yet, but we work with the area deans in order to be able to go through parish by parish with the archdeacons and the bishops and others who know what's going on, and to actually work through and come up with an idea and shape of what that engagement might need to look like. We will then have that engagement. At the moment, we're intending that engagement will happen in the autumn, September, October, etc. That's when it will begin. And we will contact parishes and say we want to have that engagement. We're not going to just send out a spreadsheet and say, here it is, this is what's going to happen. So I would say, yes, I appreciate that there are some high-level messages that you will go back and your parishes will want to translate in what it means to them. I understand that. But I think what I would ask is, alongside that, you also say, we are working to be able to come and engage with you. We're not going to drop you in it. Does that help?
I understand all that. I'm still not sure how and I accept what you're saying, and I understand everything you're saying, but I'm still not clear how I keep everybody on board between now and whenever we have our meeting and consultation in 6 months' time. I think I've got quite a difficult job trying to keep everybody together over that period.
But I think the first thing, don't panic, right? There is going to be a proper consultation with every parish affected, as Peter said. We're looking at a transition period of 3 years.
For the main transition.
Yeah.
It may well be that for some parishes, the transition is much, much longer.
Yeah.
It may well be that transition doesn't happen for some parishes until they have a vacancy. But I can't tell you that detail hasn't been worked through. So The intention, of course, is that no change. We're not planning to change anything until the beginning of 2019.
Yeah. So this year you'll get your request as it has been under the current system. We're going to keep that for next year, for 2018. So the first year of transition will be 2019. So there is some time. I think we've there's 2131 down there. I'm sure you all want to get home, but if there's a couple more points anyone wants to make,
It's 580,000 is a key part of it, and I think it's fantastic. I think that's the thing that's going to encourage growth. And what I'd like to see is parishes working together, maybe to apply together for a shared youth minister or something like that. So I hope that's part of the plan in transition, is to communicate and encourage parishes to work together, maybe to apply for some of that growth fund.
Yeah, I mean, separately, we have set up a growth fund which parishes can apply to as well. So we're very much trying to, one of the things that the Board of Finance has done in the last 12 months, and Peter's done a lot of work on this, is taking some of our capital assets, and we don't have as many as lots of other dioceses, but trying to orientate those towards a growth fund, so parishes who want some cash to prime an initiative, they can come and apply for that. And that's irrespective of the changes to parish share that's coming around. I mean, in a way, what we're trying to do is mirror changes that are happening at a national level within the church. The way the church commissioners used to hand out their money was based on basically subsidy of the poorer diocese. But once that money had disappeared into the diocese, there was absolutely no transparency on how they used it. And that has been completely changed now to 50% of that money going to the poorer diocese, and they must use it to support their poorest parishes. And that is being monitored and checked. And 50% going towards growth initiatives, which is open to any of the dioceses in the country. So it's a much more intentional support for the poorest, those in the most challenging circumstances, combined with supporting anybody who wants to grow. One last one, and then we'll call it closed.
Thank you. First of all, clearly the parish share needs to be revised and simplified. I agree with that entirely. I'm somewhat concerned that growth seems to be solely identified with numbers, and I just find that a little bit alarming, because growth is not just about numbers of people, seats, bums on seats, is it really? That's the first point I would make. And whilst transparency is a good thing, I can't help but wonder whether, along with the transparency, the rebalancing that's being made is fundamentally too extreme, and that, yes, I can understand that larger churches and growing churches feel their growth is being hampered, but perhaps mitigating all of that hampering is going too far, and there will be fallout at the other end of people or churches who are growing in other ways and serving their community in other ways. It's a bit like, means testing on benefits. You always have some people who fall below the cracks if you set the thresholds too low, and sometimes you have to accept that there'll be some taking advantage of the system, for want of a better word, in order to make sure all those that really deserve it don't get missed out.
I'm going to take that question. So I'm Louise Oliver. I was the treasurer at All Saints in Newhall, and we went through a period where we were deemed non-viable. We had great support from the diocese, I have to say. We had great support from the church. We ran a stewardship campaign, and we increased our giving by 40%. We looked at a number of things as a church. It was a really, really difficult time, and I feel for your churches that are going to head into a difficult time. But it was a growth period for us, a really, really important spiritual growth period. And we feel we're really blessed having been through that experience. And so it isn't just about, big memberships and big numbers. It's about, as a diocese, pulling together and working together, and making sure that some of the weaker, more vulnerable churches are supported. And I think that this strategy actually really supports that.